G'day subscribers, today we're going to talk about under the bonnet colours, headlights, tailpipes and kingpins. You're with Jules Knight on Jive Talking Garage. G'day subscribers, thanks for joining us. Now, what I wanted to talk about is the amazing Facebook. We have a little Facebook page at Jive Talking Garage, and it just so happened that I put an overhead picture of the General Motors engine assembly room. And we'll show it in a moment, but it's generated so much discussion. And one of the things that's come from it, and I really take this to heart as a management consultant, when you're examining it, I could have had a field day at General Motors because just looking at the photograph, what it is engines in their raw finish. They've been assembled. They are being tested. They've had fitted the starter motor, the distributor, the generator, the fuel pump, carburetor, and fuel lines, and so they are being tested. And you can see them with the Bosch color, which Don Loeffler has said to me, call it Bosch orange. So, I went to a color consultant and said, is this brown, red, not considering the orange part of it? And I was told straight away, and she's more qualified than I am, and that's therefore said it's more red than it is brown. So I thought, okay, that's fine by me. I'll just call it the Bosch colour. But then talking to the great man, and he said, oh, Bosch orange, Jules. So I thought, okay, Bosch orange it is. That's fine by me. Now, what I was thinking is, looking at this picture, you can actually see that they have assembled an engine, tested it, and then taken all the bits off, the condenser, the fuel pump, because the fuel pump's in, it's natural surface, natural finish. That's been removed. The generator, because the generator's Bosch orange, except for the fins, the cooling fan fins on it, the cooling fan blades, and also the starter motor. So starter motor, generator, and distributor come off, as well as the carburetor and the bakelite base. Now, that must be the case because logic would decree that if they weren't then removed, so we have photographic evidence, and I've just put up a picture of that colour as supplied by Robert Bosch in Sydney, and that's the specified colour. That those items and components were put on the engine. So that was the engine accessories. So they were dressed. And so after that, the engine was run, tried, tested, proven. Then it would have been painted. And then the items put back on to dress it. Now, the reason that must have happened because we have the photo showing a raw engine with the coloured components. If the colour components didn't come off, they would be engine grey. And I can assure you that they are not. That's my own starter motor. Oops, here I am bumping everything around. And this is from Marshall. And I've got all around this, the red hue is still there. It's the same with, old generators. The red hue is still, they are not engine grey. They're not engine grey. So that's fine. Now, later on, they went from, as far as colouring components in later model, of grey motor components to other colours such as blue. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So what I'm trying to prove is that these components, the regulator box was the Bosch colour, the starter motor was the Bosch colour, the body of the generator, Bosch colour, except for the fans, okay, and also the cup for the distributor, Bosch colour, and then the vacuum advance, the part number badge, and also the condenser and the little bolt that comes through, they were the Bosch colour as well. Now, fun fact, for the first time ever, and this shows how nerdy I am, having a look in the Master Parts catalogue today, I noticed that the information on the distributors is actually given in metric. So think about it for a moment. 1948 to 1956 car. So FJ's 1953 through to 1956, and then some spilling into March 57 for the panel vans. They are quoting these in metric. You know, the hole and in 8mm and so on. So pretty amazing, really. But anyway, put that aside. So we've got the Bosch colour, the Bosch orange. Let's call it what it is, Bosch orange. That's what Don Loeffler said. That's what we're going to go with. It's Bosch orange. So engine enamel, you give it a hit with that. My mate doesn't even put an undercoat on it. He gives it a thorough clean and a few coats of the engine grey, and that's it. So the engine and the gearbox in itself painted. Now I've shall we say I've seen from the photograph that I put up, a lot of discussion was generated, even including Ian from South Australia saying, Jules, you could get a heavy duty regulator box that was donated. It was shown in a black cover, because this is black inside, right? Heavy duty black. And I'm thinking, really, I didn't know that. So that denotes it is a heavy duty regulator. If it's 6-volt and in black, I'm thinking, oh, okay. Well, that was probably for a taxi pack, not just a business sedan. Because don't forget, we had regular production options. We've talked about them previously. And so that was really good of Ian to actually bring that up. I had a look in my black Master Parts catalogue, and I went looking for it. I couldn't quite see it, but that could very well be me, because, you know, sometimes I've got the IQ of a squid. So, you know, I couldn't quite see it in there, but it might be in another version. So, you know, someone tells me something, I'm quite happy to listen. Doesn't have to be the state motto of Missouri, where you show me and I'll believe you. But anyway, that's a different story. So, what I'm going to do is, I understand that there's a list out there, and some of our subscribers sent me a list, and it's not an official list. You know, it's not the it's not the, you know, specification. This component, this color, that component, that color. You know, that's panel vans, sedan, and so on. You know, someone has faithfully tried to do the right thing and say, okay, well, this is what I think it is. Now, I've had a look at the list, and there's some variations that need to be talked about and addressed and so on. And during the course of the week, I tried to do that a little bit with Jive Talking Garage by reaching out to subscribers across Jive Talking Garage, the FXFJ movement, and so on, and getting input from a lot of people. And so I can say I got a couple of surprises, which was good. However, you know, it's really important to talk about all of these things, because you learn new things every day. Like the metric in the FJ Holden Master Parts catalogue. Who would have thought? I mean, I would have put money on the fact that, you there would be no reference to metric in there whatsoever. However, there is. But anyway, let's shall we say, move along. But anyway, don't forget the if you come across the 6-volt black regulator box, and it looks, so I would say it's black, and it would probably have the stickers on it, and it is 6-volt. That's the important part to denote. I would say it would have the yellow sticker, and it would be 6-volt. That would be the important part. Now, let me just say that vehicle manufacturers were quite happy to make special orders for the taxi industry. My dad had taxis from 1951 till 1999, and I'll give you an example. For instance, that you had to put the meter somewhere. The taxi meter didn't just bolt up underneath the dash. I mean, that's because there would be a handle there to turn it on. However, I remember in the last couple of, for instance, Valiants that he had, and I would expect that the same type of accessory, shall we say, was available to Holden and also Ford, was a fiberglass dash. Now, his dash came delivered with the fiber, so you had the steering wheel, all the speedo and all that sort of thing. You had the glove box over there, but everything, everything else was pretty much blank. Now, the reason that is so that when Dad could take it to Mr. Jansen, he would actually cut a hole in the meter and put the Jansen taximeter in there. So that was what it came delivered with. However, when you got the car, in the boot was a dash. And so it was a case of 2 years later, we would take the taxi dash out. It would just get turfed because he'd sold the car to somebody in the taxi, or he was trading it in, because with my old man, washing a car every single day and starting what we now know as being the silver taxis, looking after that niche market of taking the magistrates, the politicians, the private hire industry, all those sorts of things. Dad never had any trouble selling his car, whether it be a trade-in every 2 years or selling it to somebody in the taxi. Anyway, let's put that aside. So that's what was happening with him. So what we would do at the end of it, we would turf the taxi dash, the fiberglass dash, and we would get the one that was manufactured for the car anyway, even painted the same dash color. And so then it was a matter of installing that. It was a new old stock part, 2-year-old. It had been in the boot. We just kept it in the workshop from when Dad had the car delivered. And then at the end of its service life, it was a matter of popping it back in, and we could then send it on its way as a private vehicle rather than an old cab. But anyway, that's what we used to do with my old man. And I'm sure, as I just mentioned, Holden and Falcon had something similar. Okay, so what we're also going to do is we're going to get hold of the list, and we are systematically going to go through the list. I've done a lot of proving this week to actually, document colours and stuff like that. And I already know in my head from having a stocky previously what colours what and all that sort of thing, and particularly Queensland colours and so on, because there are some slight variations. However, we'll sort of do a list and talk about it, with the engine grey, the Bosch colour, the black that's used for the breather pipe, for the clutch assembly off the motor, the oil bath cap, what you could use for the when I say oil bath cap, I'm meaning oil cap that goes on the oil filler cap, I should say. And also black should be the oil bath air cleaner. Now, the other fun fact is for the oil filler cap, you didn't just get a black one if you wanted. If you bought, and I've shown subscribers this before, if you bought a alloy tappet cover, a NASCO alloy tappet cover, well, then you could, there was also a number with that as well on the, for instance, in the Accelerator magazine and the Salesman's Reference and stuff like that, they've also got the number for the oil filler cap, and it's 740 blah 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 ZP for zinc plate, which stunned me. It was one of those new things that you pick up, you think, oh, I never realized that. So that's a good thing. So you could have that too. But what we've been doing this week are a couple of things. I talked about last week what we had going through the Jive Talking Garage with a radiator and a service for a Holden. This week we've been doing some interesting things. Firstly, the taxi bar. I've installed a second taxi bar with my mate. Now, if you look at the taxi bar itself, they've got 3 screws either side. They're a bit of a bugger to get right, but they sort of fall into place so you can actually see in a sedan where the taxi bar goes behind the front seat. And there's a natural position for them to go. Excuse me. Now, the top screws drill and go in easy. But the bottom screws, the second and third screw, they're buggers. Because there is a double panel there, and they make, because you're using a coarse pitch thread to go through the top, it's really difficult to use that same type of screw for the second and third ones, both sides, purely because there's a double panel. And so, you can try, but like my buddy didn't do any good. And it was like I just said to him, you're going to have to walk away or use the other screw. You've got a finer thread. And he said, oh, look, I don't want to use a finer thread because it's got a Phillips head. I said, well, what you need is a slotted head with a finer thread on it. So that was for the second and the third holes. So they were the horizontal ones down the bottom. Now, let's talk tailpipes. Tailpipes. Now, it's nice to be able to touch something off my FJ, which is exactly what this is. This was the tailpipe that was delivered to me when I got my FJ. So that was great. So my FJ was 1954. So you can actually see the curvature that's in there. Okay, that's fine. Now, there was earlier ones, because mine was 54. So, early utes, some of them had like a little pig squizzle tail. And it was like a bit of an S in it. It was like, oh. And I looked at it and I'm thinking, I'm so pleased I had more of a straight one. But I went down to visit my buddies and they said to me, glad you're here. Got something for you. And I'm like, oh, okay. What have we got? Well, it just so happened, there we go. Tailpipe. So, in this instance, I'll be using this. Look, I've already got one on my FJ, but hey, I'm going to go new because I've got it. But what I do have to do, though, is if you look at this one, you can actually see how it's been correctly cut and angled, whereas, let's see. That one hasn't yet. So I'll have to do to this one what's been done to that one. And I'm trying to remember whether we did that or whether it came like that. I think we might have, look, I don't remember because it's like 1981. I mean, who's to say, I was skinny and had long hair, so who knows what would have happened then. But what I did want to say is Right now, I'll show you a picture of a exhaust that that I came across during. Okay, so with the exhaust, I have seen three types of exhausts. I've seen, they're all cylindrical, long, round. So I've seen ones like the picture. I've seen another one like the picture, silver. There was silver. I've seen another one like the picture, silver, but it had the NASCO diamond. It had a diamond with the NASCO badge impressed into the metal, and that was pretty cool. That was really, really, really cool. But then I saw, and I only, you know how you sort of you forget things, and it was only when I was talking about this the other day did I actually realise that I had seen, and I'm pretty sure it was in colour, a photo, and I'd also seen it in an accelerator book, so accelerator magazine. So I'm going to have to give it a good look, because what it had was, say for instance, that's the muffler. Well, the inlet pipe coming into the muffler, that part of it was black. The muffler was silver, and the exhaust part of the back of the muffler that the tailpipe went into, well, that part of it was black as well. And that was actually an original Holden photograph. And it was being, from memory, there was a whole hootload of them put on a pallet. And they were silver body, black pipes, silver muffler body, and they were stacked and stacked and stacked. And I think they were being unloaded on a pallet off a plane. I think that, if my memory serves me right, and that's probably, thinking about something I saw 35 years ago, but I'm sure it's still out there, so I will look for it. So that will try and help go into the mix for colours, because I think there is a real need for, trying to get it right. It's never going to be perfect. It's a bit like, I went down to my mate's place the other day, and I'll show you a picture of it now, and it was an original engine, but there was still grey paint on it from when it was assembled. Okay, so that was the motor. That was the motor that's sitting there, and it's all, got oil on it and all that other sort of stuff, and it's been protected and whatever else from the elements. But it, I just got that close up because I could see the engine grey paint still on the engine pipes. And I thought, that's important, because it's easy to say, oh, it was this or it was that, but you've actually got to have evidence. For instance, I had the evidence part of it drummed into me because my granddad worked with and toured with Harry Houdini and his wife Betty. They went twice around the world, and my granddad won the Houdini Prize and was his opening act in um, the UK and America and Europe and South Africa and so on, and all those sorts of places. They went twice around the world together. But one of the things was drummed into me was Missouri. And they must have been really taken with Missouri, because the state motto of Missouri was, you show me and I'll believe you. Now, I worked at BHP for a couple of years, and their practice was, if you didn't agree with something, that's fine. It's okay to not agree. But if you're going to disagree with something, well, what you've got to do is stand up, be polite about it, and disprove what the common belief is. Or because it's easy enough to say all widgets are mid-Brunswick green. Well, who cares? But the thing is, you've got to get a widget and say, well, okay, I don't really think they're mid-Brunswick green. They're, this colour or that colour, or, regulator boxes, Bosch orange as it is, or, starter motors, Bosch orange. It's fine to say it, prove it. Now, the other thing where people can be mistaken, and look, it's so easy for it to occur because besides stamping, floor pans, panels, roofs, whatever else, casting engines, making rims, they made all the big things, but Holden didn't make all the little things. The Stokes lights, the Lucas lights, the Bosch components, Olympic tires, the Disco made harness before they bought Disco. Disco also made the spark plugs. The point I'm making is that Holden made the big things, not the little things. Now, what could happen is spare parts. Who's to say that the spare part wasn't finished off in the let's just say the factory, and it was just whatever color the vendor did. Now, not every vendor you can imagine is probably going to, have the right color on things. But generally speaking, they try and do the right thing. However, they can be supplied just straight black or silver or, whatever they're doing the run as. Because let's face it, it always depends on what's on the order as to what they do. And particularly if it's just a spare part, it's going in a box and going on a shelf and being sold for when, Mr. Horace Bloggs has a broken widget and he needs General Motors to supply him with a new widget to go on his 48 or his FJ Holden or whatever else model. So the point I'm trying to make is spare parts weren't always finished as far as, colour and texture and goodness knows whatever else, the same as the factory spare part that went out the door when they were being paid to complete quality assurance, quality control, deliver and sell the vehicle. So that was sort of pretty important. Now, one of the other things that people wouldn't realise, and I didn't, even though I was nearly a victim of it, was I was reading a story the other day about people having totally different interiors than what was on their assembly plate, on their tag. And that boiled down to the fact of the new owner has come to collect the vehicle from delivery and had a look at the car and gone, oh, gee whiz, Mr. Salesman, I really don't like the interior on this car. Or their wife might say, I don't like the seats, or I don't like the colour, or I like this, but I like the one that's in that one over there. I like this car colour, but I don't like the interior colour. So the point in the book was saying, excuse me, there were some instances where they've done a swapperoonie and put the interior of this car in that car, so the interior detail that's on the tag doesn't match with what the interior is with this one, and it will be the same with the other vehicle as well, the one that they've swapped it out of. Now, that's what salespeople do to make a sale. When I bought my first Holden, it was I put an order in for a VT. Prior to that, we had the VR, and we bought that as a 2-year-old car, and then we upgraded to a VT with my work. So it was an order for 4 months, and that was when the VTs first came out into 1998. And so it was about a form, and I really got strung along by 2 dealers and so on. But anyway, let me cut a long story short. I specified Botanica mica. I wanted a Bellina. I wanted a particular interior, and I'd already done the color and the wheels and all that sort of thing. So that was great. Looked really, really good. And then when I put the heavies on them to say, look, stop mucking me around. If you don't want to sell me the car, I'll go and buy one through my father-in-law, who can get fleet, because I was used to buying fleet because I was procurement manager for the power stations. Anyway, one magically appeared of the exact specification the next day. Anyway, so I've gone to collect it on the Friday from Zups Holden at Aspley. And I couldn't believe it because the wrong interior colour was in it. It wasn't the interior that I'd ordered. And I thought, oh, here we go again. And so the fellow said to me 2 things. I said, look, that's not the interior I asked for. And yeah, scratching my head is probably what I did too. But he said, look, the interior that you've asked for, because I had the brochure. I still kept the brochure because you can imagine, I'm like that. So I've shown them the brochure. Said, it's supposed to be that colour. And he said, that's the base standard pattern. So that would be so underneath your Bellina, it's not funny. And if you wanted to downgrade to that and have that installed in a car and it's a factory make and blah, 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 it would be another 4-month wait. So do you want to do that, or do you want this car? So in that instance, I took the car that I didn't order that interior for. So, and that only triggered in my mind when I read this little story about, the Holden dealer going in to sell to these new buyers, and the people not being happy with the car, because they did do some things. Even HD, when I was buying my HD from Desmond, I said to him, how did you buy it with the X2? He said, no, Jules. All I was doing was buying a new Holden in Brisbane to take my wife to drive her down to the Melbourne Cup. He said, when I got there, the only things that I had specified was a sun visor and a front and rear tow bar, because he had boats. I said, yeah, but what about the X2? He said, no, the X2 was a free upgrade because, as the salesman explained, they had to sell so many X2 engine packs, the 179 X2, so that they could use them for Bathurst. I thought, oh, okay. And like I keep saying, you learn new things every day, which is why I like to talk to old-timers. Now, let's finish off with something. Now, I've heard this story now 3 times. Oh, I must be getting old because I'm sort of stretching. Okay, so let's talk about Mundy Brown. And I'm just going to show you a picture of the colours now. Now, with Mundy Brown, nobody knew what on earth the colour was, really. And it could be used for anything. Now, I'm just reaching through here, and really, when we first started playing around with these silly old cars, there was nothing. There was no technical information. It was like, do the best you can. Brian Smith came out in 1978 with the first restored car, which won grand champion stock at the Nationals. It blew everyone off the park, because prior to that, everything else was, whoever had the best stocky won the Nationals. So the point I'm trying to make is there was not a lot of technical information out there that was correct. Now, History of Holden since 1917 by Norm Darwin, terrific book and great resource for 1983 83, 84, whatever. Now, on page 219, there is an innocuous reference. The very last paint and paint code on his list is Mundy Brown. Mundy Brown. Now, I've heard this story by 2 General Motors painters, and also during the week by one of our members in Perth. And he's like, don't believe it, because it's exactly the same story I've heard over here. Thanks.
Sorry.
So, with Holden's, like when Scotty Too Hottie, with his Holden, when it was being done, the Monaro, there has to be a run of 15. There has to be a run of 15 at a time to justify the amount of paint that gets put in a vat, because you would have seen it's not a paint gun with a paint pot. It's just the gun handle itself with a tube that goes up to the paint vat, which has been finished and thinned correctly. And so that paint is ready to go. Now, we know from, looking at FJ Holden's, that the supervisor would get his order sheet out every morning, and he would be going, okay, we need 15 surf green. So we would go to 15 bare bodies, and he would write surf on the firewall. And then, oh yes, we need 20 calamine utes, calamine blue. And so he'd go to 20 calamine or 20 utes, and he'd just write calamine on them with a crayon. And that was to tell the painters what color to paint the body, and apply it for black, maroon, cockatoo cream, whatever color you like. Same dog, different eyebrows. Now, the same applies for when they're doing the utes. Now, I saw in that list, they were talking about Mundy Brown being in the back of 48 on the floor of the boot or whatever. But anyway, I don't know. I don't talk FXs. I'm only lingual in FJ. But anyway, we have discovered that, and this is from everything I've seen, Mundy Brown is the colour for the boards, for the timber boards. Now, when I had my original boards taken to the sawmill, they said, oh, it's Quila, Jules. I thought, oh, okay, well, at least I know it is Quila. They said it's a Papua New Guinea timber that was shipped down and used. I thought, okay, beauty. So we're talking Mundy Brown. Mundy Brown gets painted on the side, the top, and the other side. And underneath was a chemical agent called copper naphthalate. Copper naphthalate. You will see it. The old version of it that was used has now been outlawed. But if you look at copper's logs and stuff like that, where they're dipping them in a copper solution to stop them rotting and white ants and stuff like that, that's it. So that was underneath the boards. That was what the underside, copper naphthalate, and then the sides were Mundy Brown, and the top was Mundy Brown. So I was at Warina in South Australia, and I also was in Brisbane on a different occasion. And on both of those occasions, I was talking to General Motors painters. And they were talking, and I forget how the subject got onto. I remember the Warina one because he was looking at my friend's panel van, and he was looking at the back and saying, that is a beautiful FJ Holden, and it is technically correct. And I'm thinking, oh, well, that's nice. And I didn't know, I'm thinking, oh, he's a mug paint punter. And he said, well, I'm a retired, so this is what, 1986. He said, I'm a retired General Motors painter. And he said, I was doing those. I thought, oh, really? And it's like, when you hear that type of thing, the alarm bells have got to go off, and you've got to stop and think, I need to listen. And what he was saying was, Monday, they would start off with that colour. And after they would, paint surf or forest or glen green, whatever dark colour, whatever they had left over, they'd throw it in the slops of Monday. Well, it started off as Monday brown, and by Friday they weren't going to waste anything. And I'll give you another time. I'll tell you about Henry Ford and a story I read in Time magazine about motor vehicles and so on, and Henry Ford. But they don't waste things, and particularly when there is leftover product. Now, this couples with the fact that you will also see some slight variations to that colour. You'll see slight variations to that colour. They start off Monday like that, but they could be a little bit lighter, they could be a little bit darker. And if you've ever scrutineered a vehicle, as soon as you say, oh, and I'm not going to say, oh, that's not stock, or that's not quite the right shade, or whatever, because don't forget, a scrutineer's job is to not judge the car, but to put them into the right category. Like I've seen a blue panel van not have Monday brown boards, but have blue boards. It's totally wrong, but anyway. The point is, they would start the week with that, and because General Motors would and didn't really care too much about the colour of the Monday brown and the boards, and as long as there's a little bit of it doesn't matter. They're not going to waste product. And if they're not going to use any more of the Glen Green, Surf Green, Black, Burgundy, Maroon, whatever, that is not going to materially vary, and I say vary rather than change, well then it'd get put in the vat of Monday brown for it to become Monday brown. And I'm thinking, gee whiz. The things you learn, and the exact same story was repeated back to me Tuesday night by a bloke in Perth. And he said, I heard this. This is exactly what I heard. So I thought, okie dokie, that's 3. And the other thing, I think painters must have a bit of a sense of humour too, because we had one here in Acacia Ridge, and let's just say his initials are JC, and leave it at that. He was a long-term painter, and what he would like doing was in the boot or behind the back seat or whatever, he liked to put his initials on it, JC. And then off it'd go to the next workstation. And that was fine, because what would happen is no one knew anything. He said that was fine until the end of the 3rd year. He said, I had management ask me to come and give them a visit. I said, oh, did you, Mr. JC? He said, yes, I did. I said, what happened? He said, we've been looking for you for a couple of years now, and we finally figured out who it is. You're the one that's writing your initials on the Holdens. And he said, well, yeah, I am, because I'm taking pride in what I'm doing. And they said, yes, well, we understand that, but we want you to stop doing it. So Mr. JC had to stop putting his initials on Holdens for fear of losing his job. So anyway, we've talked a lot today. I hope some of it was informative and probably more so entertaining, because let's face it, Holdens are a pretty dry subject at the best of times, but there is a lot of information. There is a lot going on. You do learn something new every day. And who would have thought there was metric in the FJ Holden Master Parts catalogue? That really surprised me. But we've talked about colours and more colours and paint and colours and a tailpipe and the colours on the tailpipe and a bit of specification about the colours. So we've had a bit of a colours day today. So needless to say, I'd like to also thank a lot of our members for feedback. Andy in the UK, he's always an active member. Rob and James and all those sorts of guys who've been terrific in sort of responding with some out of the ordinary requests that were surprise, based on colours. So we'll certainly get to the bottom of all of this as far as the colours of the FJ, because remember I only talk FJ. But to give you, some form of credential in saying, well, what do you know, Jules, about colours and whatever. I've been around FJ since 1979. I bought my first FJ in 1981. I have had 8 FJ Holdens, all stockies. I bought one that wasn't a stocky, and the first thing we did was turn it back to stock. I now have a panel wagon, which is a 2-door Holden panel, FJ Holden panel van with the station wagon internal. So that's a 1 of 3. I've scrutineered at local, state, and national level, and on every occasion I've actually been invited to do it, because I think it's more important to, if the people want you, well, then they will ask for you. So I never try and push my way in or anything like that. So you've got to have that quiet confidence about it. I was National Secretary of the Australian Early Holden Federation for 2 years, and I was the person who pitched it to actually bring the Nationals for the very first time for the Nationals to be held in Queensland. So I've built stockies with my friends to national level. My own car, I received the Judges Prize at Jindabyne, which I'm very proud of, and thank you, Graham, for that award. Pleasure to have received it. But they're my credentials. So, I might have a bit of a joke about colours and about stockies and things like that. But I drive a stocky. I live and breathe it. I find it very difficult to think that I would have a modified car and hold myself out as a stocky person, because it really just, you got to live, breathe, and do it to understand it. So, but anyway, that's it for the day. Hope you've enjoyed what I've had to say. This has been Jules Knight on Jive Talking Garage. Stop by our Facebook page and see what we're doing at the Quirky Home of Holden, because there's always something crazy going on. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, but more importantly, enjoy your Holden.